What's up, Theater Philadelphia fam? We are so excited to be back with another podcast episode for our seventh annual Philly Theater Week. Today, I am talking with Crossroads Comedy Theater, and representing is Mike Marbach, which is going to be amazing. A conversation. I don't know if it's going to be funny though, because I try to track jokes here and there, but I'm excited to speak with Mike and to get a little behind the scenes of what it means to create all of these comedy shows running this festival. So, Mike, can you introduce yourself for me and let us know where you coming from?
Yeah. Good morning. Thanks for having me. My name is Mike Marbach. I'm the founder and managing director of Crossroads Comedy Theater.
So, Mike, what does it mean for because sometimes we think of comedy, we think of comedy as just like the stand up, this like notion, and sometimes recognizing that comedy in itself is a theatrical practice and skill to dive into. Can you talk more about why you founded Crossroads Comedy Theater and kind of the history that it's come with?
Sure. Well, like anybody that gets involved in comedy or the arts or comedic arts, I grew up loving all of it. Like I grew up watching Seinfeld. Grew up watching Johnny Carson. Not to date myself, but yeah, I grew up watching Carson and all the comedians. I used to own volumes of VHS tapes of stand-up comics, Kevin Pollak, multiples of different uh, uh, specials from George Carlin. Like I had so many VHS tapes of comedians. I was always interested in it. I went to college at DeSales University, ran a sketch comedy show there. Speaking of sketch comedy, of course, Saturday Night Live. Grew up watching that.
Yeah.
Particularly with the cast of Chris Farley, David Spade, Adam Sandler, and then on from there. Dana Carvey for sure was a huge inspiration to me because he did impressions. Jim Carrey for that reason, and Kevin Pollak as well. So that's one of the first things I started doing was doing voices and impressions. So each year in Philly, I would do the "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" in like 50 different celebrity voices. Always fun.
Yes.
And then I moved to Chicago after college and got involved in improv. I moved there to do stand up, which I did do, just not very long. Because then I discovered this improv thing and I was like, oh, you can go on stage, have fun, be funny, and you don't have to prepare anything. Okay, yeah, that sounds more like my speed. So I did that. I performed with IO Chicago, the Annoyance Theater, took classes with a lot of people that literally wrote the books on improv. And my time in Chicago was pretty awesome. Like it was a sweet spot history of Chicago moment in time where a lot of people who are in writers' rooms, on stage, on television, on film, kind of were around at the same time. Like Kumail Nanjiani was, if you're familiar with Kumail, would open up for our improv team at a bar at like 11 p.m. on a Monday. Like, yes. And now he's an eternal. Who else? Adie Bryant from SNL. I went through classes with Adie. Vanessa Bayer was performing around town. Cecily Strong. Like it goes on and on. Like it was just such a beautiful time to be in Chicago and see all of these people who are now doing this stuff. And then I left. I went and moved back to Philly, where I quickly got involved in the growing comedy scene in Philly in 2009. And I quickly got involved with Philly Improv Theater, where I stayed for the next 10, 11, 12 years, something like that, acting as the education director, taking that program from a handful of classes to one of the largest on the East Coast with classes in improv, sketch comedy writing, stand-up, acting. Then I also served as the artistic director leading up to the pandemic, which closed the theater. And I putzed around Philly for a while because, couldn't leave the house. There wasn't, yeah, there was nothing to do. And live arts was essentially dead for a good long time. And there was no prospect of it coming back anytime soon. So I took the opportunity to move to Indianapolis, where my Philly family now resided for a long time, and with the full intention of moving back to Philly. And it's now like 3+ years later, and I have not yet done so. But I started Crossroads Comedy Theater while I was out here in Indianapolis, and talking to people in Philly who still wanted to do something. Still even very soon after the pandemic, we started after the closures and the lockdowns. We started adapting some shows. Study Hall, which is one of our longest running and most popular shows, comedy inspired by lectures, we adapted for the internet. We did something like 25, 30 online shows for that throughout the course of that first year of the pandemic. We did Not Yet Rated. And I also run a podcast network. And it just became difficult to have multiple shows with multiple websites, multiple emails. So I formed Crossroads Comedy Theater to kind of be an umbrella for all of those efforts. And with the intention of like, I'm in Indianapolis, I'll do some Indianapolis things while I'm here, but it didn't turn out that way. I very quickly started doing things in Philly because there were people there. It was around I think it was like June 13th or so, around there, 2021, when the city of Philly was like, hey, everybody, the pandemic is over. And everybody threw their masks up in the air in a graduating the global pandemic kind of fashion. And we're lucky enough to have Michael Udell within our company. Michael Udell is a public health expert. He's been with Study Hall for a very long time, literally wrote books on viruses and all those sorts of things. And he was like, we're going to do a live show, but we're not going to listen to the city of Philadelphia's guidelines. The pandemic is not over. Here's what we're going to do. So we did testing. We had everybody in masks. We had everybody social distancing, everything where Philly was like, it's all good. Everybody's fine. He's like, no, it's not. So we did. We held our first shows that weekend, and it just kind of snowballed from there. To the point where the thought of doing things in Indianapolis didn't even start until fall of last year, because everything in Philly just became so big, so fast for us because it's like essentially it was me, Lisa Lawrence, Channing Billups, people that I worked with at FIT who were helping to kind of resuscitate a Philly comedy scene. At a time where the main players like Comedy Sports and FIT were still closed. They hadn't quite opened back up just yet. There's a lot more things in place for them to have to do, so it's understandable. So we kind of came in at a time doing things in a safe way, but it was also like we were the only thing that was going on. So we just had a lot of attention on us.
But that's also
so things just kind of grew.
That's a sign of like the notion of planting seeds and trusting that, in some ways, if it's not getting done, that you can do it, you can rally together and do it in a way. What I love about comedy is that the comedy scene also is just raw. It's like this notion of like, we gonna put the show together. Come hell or high water, like what I'm saying. It could be a bare stage, and it's like, let's get it together, let's do something. But also, what does it mean to take seriously the building of the comedy scene and to do it in a way that it's not just singular? It's a community venture. It's like, no, we collectively are building this.
I mean, Crossroads is Crossroads is that. Crossroads would not exist without that community, without the community behind it. Because I'm still in Indianapolis, and I'm doing all this. It would not be happening without people like Lisa and Channing and Nikema, our other house managers, the volunteers that we get, all our performers. That performers. There's no show without them. There's no show without our house managers there to make sure that things happen. Without the venues that are allowing us to play. So yeah, it truly is it would not exist without the community behind us.
Yeah. And can you talk about, so I always say that people always think that like comedy like is this like everyone has to laugh at this venture, that you have to gear your comedic shows towards everyone finds themselves in your space. And that's never my truth. I was like, there's some comedy you'd be like, that ain't my type of comedy. That, or there's something you're like, oh, that show right there, that's the stuff I want to laugh at. And what I love is this comedy festival that kind of like really reaches a variety of intersections of community to who might find something, a topic funny or a theme funny. Can you talk about the notion of creating these different shows that may reach different audiences in different way?
Yeah, well, comedy is definitely an umbrella. It's an umbrella term for a whole lot of different things that people might find funny. People might come to a Crossroads show and yeah, it might not be their cup of tea. But they might stay for the 8:30, and guess what? It's their brand. It's exactly what they're looking for. When it comes to the Class Clowns Comedy Festival, which is what's coming up for Philly Theater Week, yeah, there's something for everybody. The main thread that kind of ties it all together is that we want people to learn something from it as well. Hopefully the only lesson isn't I didn't like it. Hopefully they learn more than that, that they laugh and learn something. But the thing of it is we try to also be very specific about what people can expect in a show. So it's not a situation where, for the most part, someone's going to go to a show and just be totally like caught off guard by what they're seeing. So hopefully people can browse the tea and then choose the cup that they're going to like to drink. Took the tea analogy so far, I think, but I think you know what I mean.
Yes, I love. I was like, I gotta steal that analogy. I'm gonna write it down. Like, listen. No, because that's very important. I think what I think my next question centers around this notion of what is next for comedy in the Philadelphia theater scene, right? When does comedy come into play in representation, in support, in resources as well, to be taken, not saying I take it seriously now, but saying like always there's different sectors. Like I talk about the poetry scene in Philly. Sometimes I'm like, poetry is also theater. Why are we playing games like it's not? And with comedy, it's no like, it's just people getting up there to make you laugh. It's like, no, this is people curating a whole kind of theme and using this improv to bring this to life. What are some like resources and some things that you hope come to support the comedy scene in Philly and to bridge any gap that there may be between theater and comedy?
Yeah. I think that a lot of that perception of alternative comedy feeling or being perceived as less than traditional theater comes from the presentation. Like when you go to a theatrical show, traditional theater show, you're going into a place where you're sitting down and there's a curtain that opens up, and it's not necessarily possible or expected for someone in traditional theater to do their show at the back room of a bar, where a lot of alternative comedy can happen and thrive in that setting. The place where I see Crossroads and see Crossroads going is trying to bridge that gap and present shows that have a concept behind them. We did or I directed, this was at Philly Improv Theater, a sketch comedy, a horror themed sketch comedy show called Nightmare on John Street. And one of the things that we did was it was theatrical sketches, very kind of quick moving, minimal props, and we partnered with Tribe of Fools, who did a segment throughout the set that was very acrobatic, but it also still kind of fit the theme. So we're kind of bringing Crossroads, bringing even though it wasn't at the time, bringing different arts together. So I think that's which is also the hesitation I've had with Crossroads performing at bars or non-traditional venues. We've typically gone back and forth between Theater Exile and Plays and Players. And part of that is because I want us to be in those more traditional spaces, so that those people who might not take us seriously or take alternative comedy more seriously, it's almost like just being there takes it up a notch. There's a level of polish to it when people come from behind a curtain and don't run up from behind a bar, if that makes sense. And that's not at all to say that those shows that are happening at bars or in more non-traditional venues aren't as good. In some cases, they're better than what's happening. It's just a shame that the perception of, oh, it's happening at a bar, or it's the price of admission is 2 drinks, or it's free. It's a free show, which is another thing that can sometimes make the value of a alternative comedy show seem less than, because it's free, and sometimes people will look at that which is usually meant to provide greater access. You might have an audience member who looks at that and is like, oh, well, if that's the value they're placing on it, then why should I go? So there has to be some more meat in the middle things, which is why I like the Philly Theater Week model of pay what you want. Pay what you want. You place the value on it. I still think that there's other things, ways to go about bridging the gap between the perception and the reality, and the motivations and the expectations and all of that. But I think we're getting there, and I think for alternative comedy to find its place within the theater community and be taken more seriously, I think we're moving in the right direction, and hopefully Crossroads is a part of that.
Yeah, I agree, and I kind of observe that in the notion of having the outlook that a lot of art in some ways is trapped into this traditional kind of grind that we're trying to get to, and it's like, no, we know that we're just as good, but we would love access to these resources like space, like funding, things like to support what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And to support the fact that, and to be honest, that we are reaching the audiences that we want to bring into more theater, through what we're doing, through the authenticity we're doing.
The rental space is a big barrier. We would be doing more shows. Shout out to Theater Exile and Plays and Players for allowing us to do shows in their spaces. We would do more shows in more spaces if the rentals were a little bit more, I say, reasonable for us. They are quite reasonable for more traditional theatrical productions that have traditionally nonprofit status. So there are grants that are involved for either a single production or a company. There are higher ticket prices. So it's not feasible for Crossroads, or even people that do less than Crossroads, and in some cases more, to rent a space and pay $2,000 for the week when they're going to be just some stand-up shows, or a sketch comedy show, which is, and I think that's also on the alternative comedy community to also value itself more, and raise the level of production, raise the ticket price to at least be half of what a traditional theater ticket costs. So yeah, I think there's work to be done. But speaking of nonprofit status, that's where Crossroads is going.
Mhm.
As of yesterday, we were approved for our our entity type and our employer identification number. There's still work to be done as far as creation of a board and getting that tax exempt status, but that's another move for us, I think, as a theater company to fit into that more traditional theater model.
Mhm.
Be a nonprofit, get some of those bucks, and help raise the level of production in a building. you know?
Yeah, and I think that's something that's hard. I think around the board is this notion of all the loops and the things you have to jump through to
Yeah.
get access to that funding. I know I've talked about, you know, when asked like where we want Theater Philadelphia to go in like 5 years or so, I've always been like, I want to be able to have a space that people that a lot of smaller theater companies who are looking for rental spaces are able to access at an affordable rate. Because even
Mm-hmm.
Theater Philadelphia be having trouble finding spaces to do our thing. And
Mm-hmm.
we're like, sir, like what do you think
Yeah.
we rolled in dough for? But also shared resources are a thing that I think a lot of communities are starting to understand in a big way about why do we keep asking when we can find our own way and solutions to jump over these holes or these gates that keep
Mm-hmm.
popping up.
Yeah.
Um,
I also want to call out, I don't want to get controversial here, but the city of Philadelphia can be doing a hell of a lot more for these rental prices. There are so many places. Every time I go back to Philly, I'm like, oh, that would be a great space for us. That would be a great space for us. I'll contact them,
mhm.
and the prices are insane. The rents are through the roof. And I get that Center City was a prime location, or Graduate Hospital is a prime location. Like all these things, they're labeled prime Center City location. Yes, in 2019, things were a lot more lively. It was more of a center, but they're putting the onus on city workers and people who now work from home to come back and be like, you got to come back to work because Center City's dying. Like, no, work, come be creative, come up with a solution, work with landlords
Mhm.
to fill those spaces, tax the hell out of them until they bring rents down to get a tenant in. Like, there's so many things they could be doing that isn't just, hey, come back to work. Uh, and also supports the theater scene and the art scene and small business. Make
Yeah,
some
and we
grants available.
a grant and funding. I think that's something that we a lot of the arts and culture leaders have been having discussions and meet about and kind of are bringing up in spaces and meetings, being like, this is ridiculous,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the theater scene and like for theater, you know, I think when we talk about arts and culture, a lot of times a lot of funding goes towards visual arts or certain kind of art sectors that they feel like are more tangible to see, then they're like, oh, theater, but and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
nah, I would, you know how much it costs these productions? And also, the notion is the fact that also continuously have to prove that we
Mm-hmm.
deserve representation. And I agree. I don't agree with bringing us into, the city more, right? And saying, oh, you guys have to return. I said, well, it's more intersection than that. It's more layered than that. And you know
Mm-hmm.
why we can't come into the city. How are you gonna come to the city except is striking? Or except is
Yeah.
like, and we're not able to get into the city in some ways.
Yeah. And I don't want to get into a big thing about how workers in general have been working so hard for so long and getting so little, but the pandemic has forced a change, a
Mm-hmm.
positive change in many ways for workers to have that ability to now have a flexible schedule where they can work from home,
Mm-hmm.
spend more time with their family, go to dentist appointments, vote, you know, on a Tuesday if they wanted to go in person and do so during the day or go to the bank before it closes. Like there's so many things that are now available to many workers who were chained to the desk from 8 to 6 or 9 to 5 or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Now, so you want to go and blame them when the workers finally got something. It took a global pandemic for that shift, and now they want to take it away because commercial real estate is taking a hit. Get creative. We have
It,
plenty of unhoused people. Fill it up.
We've had to be
Get some
creative.
businesses.
We've had to survive these past couple of years of trying to. I always applaud any theater, any art sector that was doing work during the pandemic, because to even do that in you're like, this is not safe, this is unsure, but also while I believe that we need community to grow, we need to gather and to meet with each other and yada yada, but I do believe that there also needs to be accountability for the way in which we were forced to also re-examine the workforce life, especially in theater, when you think about the notion of how Zoom theater came to be, how a lot of different producing of videos and pre-recorded productions. It was like, I know a lot of actors were like, yes, work was less, but also work was more accessible as well. And in addition, we still are asking for the resources to come back in person. We still want those. We want the balance. And I think that is something that, Comedy knows all too well as well. It's like, there is a balance between how you make people laugh and how you make people like think about why they're laughing.
Yep.
There's that balance, that line. And I always say that comedy makes sometimes can be, if it's really good, it can also put you in the verge of tears because you're like, why is this funny? This right here I think is a testament to how I think a lot of times when we're making comedy and theater, ain't shit funny. Ain't nothing funny. You're like, I'm performing for you because nothing about this is funny, but I'm gonna make you laugh. And
arts is the. I'm sorry. I was going to say, like, just the whole thing that arts is the mirror of society. Sometimes it's a funhouse mirror. Sometimes that mirror is a little skewed, for the better or for the worse. But yeah, it's like, you need us, so show us the money.
You're like, and just let us, be there for y'all and be like, hey, we want to create the art. Ain't like we saying we don't want to create nothing. We would like to do the work that you want us to do, but we can't do any of that unless you put those things into place. So one, Mike, I thank you for delving deep into a sector of the behind the scenes of this comedy festival that is literally an opportunity for community to kind of be touched in many different ways and to learn in different ways. And to take ourselves a little less seriously while we're doing it. But also what this conversation revealed to me is also how serious it actually is. Right? It's like, we know it's serious, but it also is like, no, do y'all know we laughing right now, but behind the scenes, it's some serious work we trying to do and trying to shape. And so I appreciate you, delving into that and also coming to, talk more about how Class Clowns is a testament to that, a testament to the ability of the community. And so for my Theater Philadelphia peoples, please, on our website, as well as on Crossroads website as well, which is xroadscomedy.com, you will find tickets to a variety of freaking shows. Like, Crossroads came in, we were like, huh? How many shows y'all got? Go ahead, you all. Like, it's cool. But please take the time out to support some comedy, to get some laughs out, but also to learn while you're doing it. We're very excited. I'm looking forward to stopping by a couple shows myself, and putting that word out. Anything else, Mike, you want to like encourage people to look into the Class of Clowns?
We, as I mentioned, we are pursuing official full tax-exempt nonprofit status, but in the meantime, we are fiscally sponsored through Fractured Atlas. So you can go to xroadscomedy.com, click on donate, and throw some bucks our way. But the other way to do that is through the shows. Go to our website or Theater Philadelphia's websites, buy tickets to our shows, which are pay what you want. So you can see a show and pay what you want. And you can also pay more than you think you might pay for that ticket because it goes, it's a donation and it's much appreciated. You can also check out the classes that we offer in improv, sketch comedy writing, stand-up acting. There are still some Zoom classes that we offer that we started during the pandemic that we're continuing, like sketch comedy writing. We had comedy writing with Rich Tallarico, who is a writer on Key and Peele, which just ended last night. I'm sure he'll do something else. But for those people, we talked a lot about the pandemic. So I do want to say that if you have any of that social anxiety that a lot of people like myself have, that I didn't really have before the pandemic, it took staying inside and not dealing with people for months or years at a time for that to kind of show itself. An improv class is super helpful. It is not therapy. There's no replacement for therapy, but it can be therapeutic and it can help you build up social skills. Plus, you'll meet new people and have some fun in a world that tends to be on fire more often than not. But the arts, as we've discussed, is a good distraction from all of that. But yeah. Class clowns, you'll laugh and you'll learn.
Come on through, y'all. And so what we're thankful for is this conversation that is just a start. It's just a start. I look forward to connecting with Mike in the future. I look forward to hearing all of your audience surveys on what you felt going to Crossroads Comedy Theater. All right. Thank you so much. Peace. And we will be back with another episode.